It is just great to see you here this morning, and I hope you had a good weekend, especially for the mothers who are watching this morning. I hope that you had a good Mother's Day, perhaps slightly different, being separated from children and grandchildren, but still, I do hope you had a good day and you were able to connect with them in some ways. Whenever I think of mothers, I think the one thing that comes to mind is, of course, the concept of love. I mean, a mother, there's the saying that God couldn't be everywhere, and so in love, God created mothers. When I think of the Christian faith and love, one passage comes to mind, and that is the Paul's letter, first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 13. It's often read at weddings, and it talks about all of the characteristics of love and ends up with the phrase faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. The Apostle Paul holds out that love is the greatest thing in our lives. When we read these words at a wedding, they are words of encouragement, they're words of counsel as to how to have a happy relationship. Well, of course, the couple is already in love as they make their marriage vows. But these are words for a blueprint for an enduring relationship. One of my university counseling professors said that premarital counseling was not what we should be offering because love was a sickness. If a couple was in love, they would get married no matter what. She went on to say that ministers should be prepared for postmarital counseling when the blush of romance began to wane. Well, Paul believes that we need to bring love to bear on all of our relationships all the time for an enduring amount of time, not just bring it to the romantic ones. Well, when I think of a mother, I think of love. So when I think of Mother's Day, I think of the many people who have had a loving influence in my life. And I am sure that we all have had at one time or another a special person or special people in our lives who have shown us a caring and nurturing love. We think of their enduring love. Speaking of mothers, you might have heard the story of the little girl who was sitting and watching her mother do dishes at the kitchen sink. She suddenly noticed that her mother had several strands of white hair sticking out in contrast on her brunette head. She looked at her mother and inquisitively asked, "Why are some of your hairs white, Mom?" Her mother replied, "Well, every time that you do something wrong and make me cry or unhappy, one of my hairs turns white." Well, the little girl thought about this revelation for a while and then said, "Mama, how come all of grandmother's hairs are white?" When Paul wrote this letter to the church at Corinth, he wasn't thinking about individual people in love as we often do at a wedding, but he was thinking about an entire congregation, a whole group of people, a church that he had founded. And the church at Corinth was his pride and his joy. He had many dear friends there. However, something had happened in the congregation after he had left, and the members started fighting over all kinds of minor issues. As we think about Paul and the message of Christianity which he preached, we must remember that it is presented with a totally different view of the quality and characteristics of relationships within the body of Christ or the church than those of the prevailing society. The Roman world in which the Corinthians lived was a very individualistic and materialistic society based on a stratified class system. Imagine how radical his preaching is when he tells the people that they should hold all things in common. They should have great concern for the disadvantaged, and that there is no difference between the rich person and the poor slave when they were in the church. He said that Jesus welcomed everyone, no matter who they were. The Corinthians were finding these principles difficult to put into practice, especially within their congregation. While intellectually they might have bought into the countercultural Christian message, in their hearts they were having difficulties accepting it. As the congregation in Corinth gathered to worship, people were measuring one another's worth by whether they could speak in tongues or prophesy, or great expounders of Christian principles, or put on the appearance of great faith, or had given away their possessions to look good. Paul says that they are measuring things by the wrong yardstick, and that they need to temper everything with love. He says that when you think only of yourself, you are seeing dimly. You are only partially practicing the faith. So I ask that the question, when we gather as a group of people, whether it's in the church as a congregation, whether it's as families, as friends, is it possible for us to have love as the filter through which we express our future dreams and develop our goals and our plans? Is it possible for us as individuals to bring love to bear on our own personal actions, whether as participants in a church or more closely in our daily interactions with those around us? It has been my experience that most of us approach the church, whether in the congregation or the wider church, that most of us participate in the church with the expectation that love permeates everything that is done. We believe that love should temper all that a church does. But the church, being a human construct, full of human beings, sometimes shows that it has not fully embraced the teachings of Jesus Christ. And we are disappointed when the church falls short on love. How many people do you know over the course of your life who have left the church because they were disappointed with it when it didn't live up to their expectations? The church in Paul's time had come through a time of division. When in Eastern Canada, I worked on behalf of the conference with congregations who were going through some sort of strife. And my experience of those congregations was that quite often love is the last virtue to be found at those difficult times. Things are said, things are done, and afterwards it takes a great deal of love to get beyond those things. The other danger is that after healing has begun, congregations can fall back into unhealthy, loveless patterns of dealing with things. This is why I believe that the message of love is so vital for each and every one of us, for our congregations, and for our other associations in life. Do we approach our future with feelings of scarcity and inadequacy, or do we brazenly embrace God's Spirit and approach the coming days with abundance, joy, hope, and love? Paul is asking this very question of the Corinthian church. Are you willing to embrace the new life offered to you in Jesus Christ? Well, you could say the Apostle Paul was a dreamer. He had this vision of what congregations and individual Christians were to be as they followed in the footsteps of Jesus. Parker Palmer is the founder of the Center for Courage and Renewal. His center works with people to bridge the gap between what they actually experience in the world and what they feel on the inside. You know what is in your heart today. When you wake up in the morning, you have all of these hopes and dreams for the way it's going to be. And then your feet hit the ground. And as you get out of bed, you realize what actually is. What do we do in the gap between what is and what we want or hope our lives and future to be? Well, Paul has a one-word answer to this: love. This gap is especially felt at times when it feels that we don't have any power in shaping our own path in life. At times when we can't control the events of crises which are suddenly facing us. Those times when we can't anticipate which illness or grief or burden we will experience. And it is precisely in those times that Paul says we need to remember God's love is available to us. To face these gaps we experience between what we would love and what way life really is, to face these gaps rather than taking sides, giving up in despair, or denying their existence, it takes unusual courage. What if we don't see these gaps as places of powerlessness, but as places of great possibility? We can become jaded and cynical and give up in despair. We can lament the impossibility of change and just step away. We can follow the primitive urge to fight. We can become cynical or deny the situation, hoping it will go away, pretending it never happened. However, when we live truly authentic Christian lives, we will become acutely aware of this gap and realize that it can be a place of creativity, a place where wisdom and maturity grow, a place where possibility plays, and a place where God's healing grace does its work. It is a space where new community and new relationships emerge as we seek to follow Christ. Seeking to persistently live out God's love and grace implies a great deal of trust. Someone once said that the true miracle of the Christian faith is that God knows us as we truly are and still loves us. Isn't that what is wonderful about a mother's love? She knows you for who you are, and she still loves you. What we honor at Mother's Day is that there are people in our lives who are there for us through the thick and thin of life. Paul is saying that this is the type of love that we should also find amongst those in the Christian church, and that this is the type of love we should be demonstrating in all of our relationships. I want to close with some words written by the contemporary songwriter Jim Brickman, who has won numerous awards for his work. His song is entitled "A Mother's Love." Are they words which also apply in the other relationships in your life? He writes, "Thank you for watching over me all of the sleepless nights you lay awake. Thank you for knowing when to hold me close and when to let me go. Thank you for every stepping stone and for the path that always leads me home. I thank you for the time you took to see the heart inside of me. You gave me the roots to start this life, and then you gave me the wings to fly. And I learned to dream because you believed in me. There's no power like it on this earth, no treasure equal to its worth, the gift of a mother's love. Thank you for every sunlit day that filled the corners of my memory. Thank you for every selfless, unsung deed I know you did for me. Thank you for giving me the choice to search my soul till I could find my voice. And I thank you for teaching me to be strong enough to bend. You gave me the roots to start this life, and then you gave me the wings to fly. And I learned to dream because you believed in me. There's no power like it on this earth, no treasure equal to its worth, the gift of a mother's love. I thank God for a mother's love. I'm going to wish you God's richest blessings this morning. May you truly go out into the world this day in a spirit of love, to find love and to share love. And until tomorrow, God's peace, God's joy, God's hope, and God's love be with you. Amen.